So guys, before we begin, I just need to do something real quick. Okay, I think my nerves are good now.
We're all good. We're all good.
The weirdest thing about that was in my screen, the whole image sort of shook like it caught on those vibes, the gong vibes. Yeah.
It's sending it out.
The oscillations. Yeah, it was like the whole thing was pulsing.
that is awesome. You can't make
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So obviously, guys, welcome to Witchin and Bitchin, the podcast. We're your hosts, Darren.
And I'm Vicky.
Yes, awesome. And we have a special guest here. So she her reputation goes without saying, but I'm going to give you the little bio just for those who aren't quite familiar with her work. So So Fiona Horne is one of the world's most respected witches. She's the author of 14 best-selling books on modern witchcraft published over the last 2 decades, which see her writings and tireless work dispelling negative stereotypes, having a generational impact on the positive evolution of the modern witch. 30 years ago, Fiona launched a career in the entertainment industry as the lead singer of chart-topping Aussie 90s electro rock band Def FX, before continuing on to be a popular radio and television personality, appearing on many programs around the world. So stepping away from her entertainment career in recent years, she is now a commercial pilot, public speaker, and humanitarian and animal aid worker. Her personal passions include being a world record holding skydiver, professional fire dancer, yoga instructor, free diver, and sailor. So please welcome our special guest, Fiona Horne.
Hi, hi guys. So honoured. Is this really your first show? Am I really your first guest?
Yes, you are. Our first special guest.
Oh, I'm very honoured. Thank you.
So we just had Ostara about a week ago. Blessed Ostara. So how is it
Thank
for you to celebrate the seasons? Because I know, like, with being Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, and then being in the Caribbean, being in the tropics, it probably doesn't have necessarily a lot of seasons and things like that.
No seasons in the tropics other than summer and summer.
And just
they're the two seasons in the tropics.
So do you have an actual favourite, Sabbath?
I really like the summer. I like the actual storm season. It's when we actually it's extraordinary to say that because I've survived 2 catastrophic hurricanes in storm season in 2017, but I think that's when you just see some of the really, really, really big thunderstorms that come through, like the cracking of thunder and giant shards of lightning shooting through the sky. I mean, there's something very dramatic and thrilling about our storm season, as long as you don't get hit with a hurricane. And then there's also some of the most beautiful, calm, idyllic weather in storm season too. It's that kind of calm before the storm thing. So, and also it's when no tourists are in the Caribbean in that time. It's the least touristy time. So it's when the locals are really have time to have their, I guess, home to themselves. But as far as like celebrating the Sabbaths as a witch, and I started out in the Southern Hemisphere, so there was always that intriguing kind of flip-flop. Okay, the books I'm getting are written in the Northern Hemisphere. Everything doesn't seem to be happening when it's supposed to. Like, I mean, it's not winter in December, so how could it possibly be Yule? Shouldn't that be in June? And shouldn't Litha be in December? And you start to so get confused with it. But even recently, a couple of the witchcraft groups that I've joined since I've been based back in Australia these last few months, like Australian Witchcraft, Witches of Oz, different Wiccans and Witches Australia, that's another group on Facebook. Some really great people sharing ideas and questions, and still this question of how do we celebrate the Sabbaths? People are still getting confused, and I really think that it's about, if you're confused, go outside. What is nature doing? What season are you in? What's happening on the land? What isn't happening on the land? What's the moon doing? What's the day? Like, how long are the days? The witches' Sabbaths are based on astronomical events, solstices and equinoxes. So that's pretty easy. Just go to an astronomical chart and you'll see the dates exactly as pertaining to where you are in the world. And then there's the kind of the rest of the Sabbaths, the other 4 are based on agricultural events as per happened in the origins of our craft, if we trace it back to Northern European practices. But in the land, what does that mean? When do we sow the seeds to yield the crops. I mean, how are our lives reflecting what's going on the earth? You know, what's rising and falling and birthing and dying in our lives, and then we can follow through that the wheel of the year as it turns. That's what it's about. And probably everything I've said then sounds very convoluted, but it isn't. It's very simple.
Yeah.
And if you're really lazy, just Google it, and you know it's there. You know,
I know, that's it. And that's
it's like just Google it.
Everything's there. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Everything's there. But that's really, because that's a lot of what I do now and what we were talking about before. Just looking outside, seeing what's happening with the trees or whatever, and
what's growing, what's blossoming, what, you know, in some parts of Australia. I mean, I've been plugging this book a lot lately, but Julie Brett's an Australian writer who wrote a book called Australian Druidry, and I recommend it all the time because she's got this really beautiful, it's the first really cohesive, comprehensive, creative approach to celebrating the Sabbaths in Australia, particularly, that I've seen. Even beyond my own work, you know, if I put my own books and 14 books aside where I've talked about it in most of the books, I think Julie's approach is really beautiful. She offers that you create your own wheel of the year and you tie it in with, and you give the Sabbaths different kind of names pertaining to what you're experiencing in the land. And, you know, she's even got a Sabbath called Fire Burn, which is the hot fire season, you know, like I love that she's got really creative with it, and it's evolving our craft and the way we practice in our relationship with our Mother Earth, you know, upon which so much of our magic is dependent and interactive with, you know. So I think that what I like to encourage people to do is, look outside. You know, when I was living in the Caribbean, like I said, we had 2 seasons. So what I would celebrate is there was a season in the storm season when the flamboyant trees bloom. It's these giant trees that have big canopies and giant red and orange flowers. And, you know, that to me was a really beautiful sign of the dark mother's vibrant, because it's in our dark part of the year, but it's the dark. When I say dark, I just mean, now I'm going to get too complicated. Dark to me is when you become introspective and incredibly the super hot, brutal season of summer in the Caribbean, even though it's in theory the fire half of the year, it's the time where you're most introspective, because it's just so hot and you get very still, and it's to me it meets those energies we explore when we go into those contemplative states. So, you know, again, I don't want to get too complicated, but I hope what's coming across is each witch, if she has or it has any responsibility, it's to look outside, as we're talking about, trust your innate connection and what your gut's telling you and what you intuitively feel and how it's reflecting in your own life, and then offer your celebrations accordingly. Now, if you're practicing in a group or you're part of a coven, it's going to be more cut and dried, and you're going to all have to agree on how you do this, and maybe sticking to a wheel of the year as established is better, you know, for that reason. But as an eclectic solitary witch, you know, create your relationship in your magical world the way you feel intuitively guided to. And I think that's more about being the craft of witchcraft, the creative side of witchcraft, you know.
I really love that, because that's one of the things I've struggled with being a solitary witch. It's like always looking at the books of the people who have written all the stuff before. It's like you feel that pressure that, I have to celebrate like everyone else. Well, I'm solitary. Does it matter if I'm celebrating like them or differently? And I've never had that epiphany. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I really found, I mean, in 30 years of practice, traveling a lot up, you know, north, 1 minute I'm in the Northern Hemisphere, next in the South, and I lived in the Caribbean for 7 years and I'm on the equator. I had to really learn to trust my gut and my relationship with what I was doing. And then it became really powerful. And then things really started to, you know, you really do start to live a dream life, a life beyond your possible imaginings or micro manipulation through various spells and things. It's just really coming into a sense of harmony and alignment. And that's where the real magic in witchcraft comes through, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that's often not talked about either, because it's often more along the lines of like the traditional wheel of the year or traditional and things like that. And then sometimes I guess that's not as internal what's actually right for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how do you define a witch? How would you define a witch?
Well, because of what we were just talking about, I define a witch as someone who actively and sincerely seeks to have an intimate magical relationship with nature.
Yep.
As we experience this phenomenal natural world of which our physical bodies are born of, Mother Earth. Also that someone that has this very strong spiritual life, like a very potent spiritual life. Because I still, after all these years, relate to my witchcraft as a spiritual path, not a religious path.
Yeah.
I'll sometimes join Wiccan circles, gatherings, groups, ceremonies, but I'm not Wiccan. Because that is a religion, and there's a very fixed, and that's, you know, another reason why Wiccans would potentially celebrate the Wheel of the Year in that very beautifully orchestrated, established way, because they're creating a kind of a group consciousness that's based on a religion, you know, and for me it's more spiritual. So which I think is someone that is genuinely seeking their unique path and learning and growing and evolving in order to share what they've learned, and to as this magic grows and this ability, whether it's working with herbs or working with, you know, more esoteric entities and energies, crystals, whatever they're learning as far as how they're contributing to in a co-creative way to the healing of the earth and our species, because I think that's kind of the phase of our evolution that we're in as a species now. It's about healing and helping. I think, you know, to ensure some kind of relevance for our species in the biological scheme of things, but so which would be aligned with that right now in these times, and actively seeking to not only improve their own lives but others as well, and just explore all the brilliant, creative, fun stuff there is to do as a witch, and as well as the fascinating side of it, which is the shadow work, the darker work, the inner stuff, and then the communion with others. You know, our magical community, our international magical community is growing so rapidly. I mean, I said that 20 years ago, and I'm saying it even more so now. It's even more rapid than ever, and I think that's because it's timely. Phyllis Curott, dear friend of mine, amazing witch, you know, she's been around in the public eye for as long as I have. She writes, the world needs her witches now more than ever. And I think that's very true.
I guess one of the things that I'd be interested to hear as well is that, because I totally relate to all the things that you're saying on such a profound level. And it's like, for those that are watching on YouTube, you'll see what I'm holding up. But for those that are listening, obviously, a new book called The Art of Witch. And like having been someone who's read a lot of your work over the years, found that this book kind of hit home on so many levels in a way that the others, not that they didn't, but this one kind of summarized everything so elegantly, because it's something that I've often struggled with when you read so many books and you try to be like the book smart witch that reads everyone's books and tries to, you know, adopt whatever works. But then oftentimes you feel like you don't quite align, or that you're having to constantly reinvent yourself over the years. And I think this one just sums it up so beautifully about transformation and what that means to you.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you got that impression from it. It was something, you know, that isn't like a manifesto. It's something that I thought when the opportunity came along, wrote it. I hadn't been expecting I would write another book necessarily. And, you know, this is one of the things when you're aligned with the universe and you manage to get your own ego and even concept of self out of the way and just let things present themselves. And so you, like I was talking about in Art of Witch, you know, magic is the art of creating change with will. How often have we used that term, that Aleister Crowley invented term? It's like, but what about if magic is the art of changing will, changing with will, and yet will becomes part of the word willing, and willing is, you know, willing to show up, willing to learn, willing to do whatever's presented. And that was a big reason why Art of Witch came out, I think, because the opportunity presented itself. So I thought, I wasn't looking for it, so I thought I must be meant to do this. And then it was a journey writing that book for me to really just think about the last 30 years and what's changed, and if I put together some kind of manifesto that wove together all the facets and humbly offered that, would it be useful? And so I'm thrilled that you like it and found it useful.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping
definitely.
to do, kind of weave it together, but leave like just this is what works for me, and at the same time leave tons of room for individuals to apply it to their own practices, you know, and maybe it would help them explore their own practices with more confidence, you know.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's not that like you give permission to do that, but it just somebody else can see and go, oh, okay, I can explore that way. And I am still a witch if I'm doing these kind of things, because there's
Absolutely.
like a
Yeah, and
stereotype.
I think that's the key to our survival is our diversity and our willingness to grow and change and evolve. And, you know, again, magic is the art of creating change with will. That statement was written, I don't know how long ago now, 80 years or
I was
something.
going to say, yeah.
So it's time to expand the concept of what is will. I think we all realize that the finite human mind, you know, the Vicky, Darren, Fiona mind is a human construct. We're spirits having a physical experience, and we've manifested, we've chosen to come into this world as witches, you know, and take that path, forge that path. So it's really important that we allow ourselves to grow and evolve. Our only mistake would be to not try to explore our magical capacities and trust our innate witch guide inside. And you know, and like I said earlier, there's always opportunities to come together with groups, to come together with a plan and say, let's do it this way, and explore what happens. And some of the traditionals, like my dear friend Brian Kane's written this amazing book, Initiation into Witchcraft, and he's an Alexandrian witch, and it's Alexandrian witchcraft. And that's another way to explore it, you know, and it's fascinating because he talks about very specific methods and means that have evolved from Alex Sanders and Maxine Sanders back in the 60s, you know. So it's like, there's room for that too, and it's essential as well. I think for me personally, one of the most vibrant and exciting parts of our spiritual world that we explore as witches is that it is changing and evolving and adapting and growing. And I think that's essential right now because there's so much change going on in the world, and a lot of it's very traumatic and very confronting. And you know, I feel very blessed to be a witch and have my personal toolbox to deal with this shit, you know. It's like, and trust that it's actually for the good, and there's something really profoundly amazing that's going to come of it, you know.
And you know, it's funny that you mentioned that. Like, one of the things that I picked up on, I've seen a couple of interviews with you over recent times, as well as I think you touched on it in The Art of Witch as well. It's that there's also we went through a phase, I felt, as a community where there was this pressure to project this publicly accepted version of what it is to be a witch. Like, we had to constantly, you know, project this white witch and even defend and say, oh, I'm a white witch. And we had to identify with the label that society has given us. But then I loved how you expressed that you're allowed to experience things like anger and hate and things like that. Like, is it okay too? Like, are you happy to elaborate a little bit on that? Because I'd love for our...
You know, that was one of the main bits of feedback I got from Art of Witch was that I started a chapter with, you know, now a few words about a very powerful emotion, hate. And I said, I hate two people and I know who they are, and I'm not, it's okay to experience that emotion of hate and not have to, as long as it doesn't become a destructive, self-sabotaging attachment to it. It's a very powerful emotion that when, you know, tapped into, channel and tapped into, explored and channeled to a degree, it can be a very cathartic, healing emotion too. When you move through the layers of it, understand what it is, and even decide to allow it to accept and exist, and accept it, live, and let it live and exist in your life in a way that you are mindful and learning with and from. But yeah, as far as like over the years, you know, the image of the witch, certainly in my public life, I had to at different times present very kind of bubblegummy type white witch.
You mean like this one?
Which one are you holding up? Life's the
Witch.
Yeah, you know, I mean, God, you know, Goddess Bless Random House. I mean, incredibly, that book has just been, I've just rewritten that book and reworked it and spent the last year creating a new book based on that book. And it's called Magic Youth, a handbook, Witchcraft for a New Generation. And its cover is black. So
beautiful.
It comes out in February and it's very, very black. Black with red and gold on it. But yeah, no, Random House.
Available, is it?
There's a sneak preview of it out on Rockpool Publishing, is my publisher's website. They talked me into doing it, and I realized not so much talk me into it. They said, would you be interested in reworking this one? And it just seemed like, well, this is happening. I need to show up and do it, you know. And at these times where I've been working on these books these last years, I've also been flying in airplanes for my job. So it's been a lot to kind of carve out the time, and yet I know that it's a divine gift to be able to put some things in print and share ideas and thoughts and hopefully perform a useful service in the world, and especially as our craft continues to grow and evolve. But getting back to the image stuff, back in those days, like 20 years ago when Life's a Witch came out and Random House made that bubblegum pink cover, and some of the lovely teenagers that came in and did the cover shoot with me, I'm still in touch with as friends. They're adults now, and there was a lot of beautiful energy around that. But the pink to them was important because they felt it needed to, buy into the stereotype that there are good witches and bad witches, and make sure that everyone knew I wasn't a bad witch. And that kind of pink, white bubblegum cover image went on for a while. And, that's where I think when my career started to become about being a public witch, and I was doing a lot of TV stuff pertaining to it. There was a book being published every year pretty much. After 10 years of that, I felt like, there's a point where you want to do things to be useful, and plus it's become your career, so you're trying to put food on the table, pay your rent, pay your bills, do the usual things. And it just started to become really exhausting, and I felt really quite lost in it all. And I did an autobiography in 2017, The Naked Witch, and that was the first of this stepping back into writing again after pretty much not writing for a good 5 or 6 years. But, in The Naked Witch, I got to explore my life, look back at it, and write, this autobiography as I've come to the half-century mark. And I can see where the best day in my witchcraft career was when it stopped being my career, and it became something that was me again. And then it went through this huge evolution, like this massive evolution of personal practice, and where I really started to realize that it's not about me and changing the world to suit me. It's about me being useful in the world and being of service. And that's where the real magic lies. And that really does tap into what were the original witches, midwives, healers, herbalists, like shamans. Like, we were always the healers and the people that were there, that the individuals that people came to for guidance and help or support. So when I redefined my practice to be more about that, less about me and more about how I could be useful, then really magical shit started to happen. It was kind of extraordinary. And then, I got really involved in the humanitarian aid work then, and the animal rescue work and everything. And I was just, I had very little as far as, I would say I own nothing except my freedom and my happiness, and my willingness to be useful and show up in the world. And then the book offers started to happen, and then work as a pilot started to come through, and everything just kind of grew again, and everything became just the next level witchcraft, I reckon.
This is the next level. So what do you think was the actual catalyst for that evolution? Because it is, like, when you read the book, I absolutely saw, like Darren was saying, that it's so different and it's also so different to anything else that's out there about it as well. Was there sort of a point that you were mentioning then where it was becoming your job and not so much about you anymore? Was there a point that kind of really a catalyst for that change?
I just think that
a natural kind of
evolution. I just felt like there was so much going on in my personal life too that wasn't aligned with living an effortless, not effortless, but living a fulfilled. You don't always have to be happy. I mean, it's, being the best life is not the happiest life. It's the most fulfilled life. When you're going through deep grief, a very close family member of mine passed 2 weeks ago, and the grief was so, just so overwhelming. And I've kind of put it aside now, but, when I still felt fulfilled in my grief. Yeah. I felt anchored in my grief. Grateful that my grief helped me know how much I love this person. And, it's not always about being happy. It's when I think about the catalyst of what made me realize that I just didn't want to be a public witch anymore, and maybe I shouldn't be a public witch anymore, was I think it was around I was around a time where I'd written another book, but I was just feeling increasingly lost. And yeah, I mean, I guess that I don't really know how else to explain it. There's a whole lot of stuff, just life.
It's just
and
life.
Then when I talk to but when I talk to other witches who you know, like who've been around for a while, you know, I'm 54 in physical years now, and I think of other witches that are my mentors that are now in their 70s, you know, that I look to for guidance. The original witches, when I was a witchling, they were, you know, the mature, and now they're like, you know, they always say that, you know, you kind of come out, you come in, and then if the goddess still has work for you to do, you'll come out again. You know, there's a point where, you know, it's essential that you be a teacher. That's part of the, or some kind of mentor in some way. That's part of the journey. It's not about being high priest or high priestess of a coven. It's about, it can be if you're in a coven and you're working through your stages to get to that. But as far as an individual, eclectic, solitary, witch, whatever, where there is a point where we'll be called upon to share our magic, and you got to be ready for that calling. And I think when I took it all in and just kind of worked on myself and kind of evolved through really, really walking the talk and not just talking about it, then all of a sudden I'm being called back into the public eye again and being given these beautiful opportunities to take action, like this upcoming tour I'm doing. And the tour I did last year, there were opportunities to connect with people, communicate with people. It's not like the days of being in a band where you go on tour and you know, you have hundreds and hundreds of people and it's just full on and it's your job. These tours I'm doing now aren't my job. They're something where it's an opportunity to connect and communicate with others and share sacred space together. It's a particular privilege for me to meet up with people who come to the events who are, you know, it might be someone who did read Life's a Witch all those years ago and they're bringing their teenage daughter with them or something, you know, and it's just to know you've had that generational kind of impact on people's lives is really humbling and beautiful. So there's a lot of that kind of, and I think when we come together in confidence as a magical community, then we're putting that energy out into the world, and even indirectly we're helping heal and guide, you know, put some good energy out there that is helping guide the human race right now.
I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's because I think that Vicky, you were saying to me that was one of the things that you really took from the book when we were speaking yesterday about it. It's like the whole shift to being of service to other people. It's like when you finally find that calling of how it's not about what can I like do in front of you. It's like, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Like, you kind of get that power and energy.
Yeah. And then stuff gets really, really magical. It's like, really extraordinary things start to happen and you don't have to second guess or doubt it anymore. It's happening. It's real. You know it. And it's much more brilliant and extraordinary than special effects magic. You know, it really is.
I don't know if it's a topic that is up for discussion, but it's just something that came to me because like, obviously Vicky and I approached you because you're someone that we looked up to when growing up as little witchlings, growing up in the world.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned on it now, the people that you look up to, like, who did you look up to in your witchling days? Is it something that...
I had, well, it's to actually be able to meet people in person. When I was coming into it, it was, you know, we're in Australia. And so a lot of the people I was looking to, like Ray Buckland and people like that, were overseas. And but there was one woman here, Lai Warren Clark, that I ended up meeting a few times, and I mean Facebook friends with her now, and she's definitely someone I would consider, you know, just an extraordinary, powerful witch and a real mentor, and in the sense of I don't have to call her all the time, but it's just knowing she's there and having some communication with her every now and again and just watching how she lives, you know, and her principles of her magic and her practical life. Find very inspiring. But say someone like Ray Buckland, you know, who wrote the complete book of witchcraft, the big blue book that, you know, is back in those days was everyone's go-to and still is, you know, to be asked to, like the custodians of his museum have asked me they'd like to do a Fiona Horne display in Ray's museum.
Oh,
Ray
wow.
contributed a piece to the book that Darren's got, Pop Goes the Witch. Ray contributed a piece that, like, so even if I haven't stood in front of them, but having communication with them is really, really amazing. Oberon Zell's another gentleman who I ended up doing Hexfest with. It was a huge honor to meet him, because him and Morning Glory back in the day, the Green Egg and all those really early pagan magazines, that was stuff I was looking at then. I mean, it might all sound quite random in a sense, because but maybe not. Maybe you guys know about these people. But these were the people that really really kind of I looked up to back then. Bill Beattie, who's now Liam Kifrin, who lives in New York. He was the original editor of Shadowplay magazine. He even helped me edit some of my early books. He's always been someone that I've looked up to greatly. And then also there's Phyllis Curott, who I mentioned earlier. She's a little bit older than me, but when I was coming out of the broom closet in the public eye, and she had her book of shadows that was out in America, it was like a #1 New York Times bestseller. And she's a New York lawyer writing books about witchcraft, and we became very close friends and still are. And I'm just so inspired by her and her work. She does so much work to do with natural shamanic work, as far as and really, really sort of politically active work too, with her background as a lawyer. And then she has the Temple of Ara, which is, a group that's been going for a long time, that really brings people together in a magical way. So, I can keep thinking about it and keep thinking people. Christian Day, who's younger, but I mean, I could go on and on, so I'll stop. But I think this is one of the reasons I'm kind of waffling on and saying a little bit here, a little bit there, and you guys can say you're a big influence. Well, there was something unique about me that all those people that I just mentioned didn't have, except maybe Phyllis. I had a major bloody profile. I was like, rock star, TV, radio, witch. And so I was everywhere. So it was very easy for you guys to identify and go, oh, lucky me, you liked what I was offering. But that's one thing I look back, and I think it's quite unique when I look at the career arc I had, was just how much in the public eye I was, how I kind of, and I think Goddess wanted it to be like that. I think the universe intended it to be that way. I copped a ton of flack. I copped so much shit from people. But, I think it was meant to be that way, to be that public witch, and to dance that kind of dance in the public eye, to be presented as this white witch personality, and then but be in this beautiful position to then work towards dispelling the negative stereotypes. And now it's so wonderful to see how our community's evolved, and we don't need to be whitewashing it or saying what it isn't anymore. We say what we are, and we are witches, and that's the bottom line. And a lot of our work is shadow work. That's part of our path. It's part of how we know. It's the cycles. It's Samhain. It's what we have to do. We have to go into that dark half and do that inner work, and do that harder, explore those darker emotions and energies, and understand their role in our lives. And it's all part of it.
One of the things I find so fascinating is that, like, when a witch talks about shadow work, everyone's like, gasp. But when a psychologist or a life coach or any of those types of people, because I'm a life coach as well, but like when we talk about shadow work, it's so much more accepted to talk about the shadow self when you're talking about it from a coaching or a psychological.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, and I guess we'll just keep chipping away at those negative stereotypes, but we don't want to dilute our side of what we do too. And I mean, we explore the world of myth and lore, for want of a better terms, in a unique way too, and as witches. And I think that's I think as witches we're more willing to explore our mortality as well. There's so much more that the symbolism of death and rebirth is very potent in our lives. We don't whitewash it or run away from it. And I think that's another thing that maybe kind of comes across as scary sometimes, but it's not. It's all part of life,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a part of all of the whole life. And when we kind of pick out these little bits, that's when we fall apart a little bit, because it's not part of the whole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Fiona, do you have any advice for? Because obviously times have changed. Like, I mean, if I was to just briefly refer to Pop Goes the Witch, like this was written some time ago now, but it was like the Disinformation Guide to 21st Century Witchcraft. Yeah. This like was in the early 2000s. Now we're at 2020, so you could almost rewrite this entire book. Not a challenge. Not saying. But like, I was having a flick through this in preparation for this interview, and I was even looking at the back. Like, Vicky and I spoke about it in private one time, where we used to be signed up for Witchvox. Now that doesn't exist anymore.
No, I know. I looked up Witchfox the other day. Yeah, I was actually going to recommend it in my Teen Magic book, the new one, because I thought it was still going, and I looked at it and was like, oh my god, it's gone.
Yeah,
that's crazy, isn't it?
I remember you were on the front cover of Spellcast magazine here in Australia.
Yeah.
That's not around anymore.
And there was Witchcraft magazine in Australia. My girlfriend Lucy Cavendish, who was called Lucy Cavendish, was doing that back then, and then there's She de Montefort still does magic magazine. She kind of produces that herself, and then over in America there was New Witch, which was really popular for a while, and that went away. I mean, it's my girlfriend Tonya has an online magazine called Witchway magazine, which she sometimes prints out as a hard copy magazine, but it's an e-zine. I think we're in the world of e-zines now. But it's yes, I didn't mean to cut you off then, but it's amazing how there's so many things have gone, but so many things have come in its place.
Yeah, but that's actually that segues into what I was actually going to say next, because like now with like Vicky and I have shared stories with each other. We had a similar past where in order to get a book about witchcraft, you had to almost hide yourself and creep in and make sure no one saw you, and then you slide magazine to other magazines, all that stuff. But like now as times have changed, like obviously, as you've said in many interviews, you can just type in Witches of Instagram, which I follow, and it's like bang, you're hit with everything. A million
hits. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the challenges in our times is to not let that the amount, we're just so out there now, like, you know, and not let it dilute our occult hearts, so shall we say, like, because our path is occult, which is secret, hidden, and when it's out there in that massive way, there's some really beautiful gifts that come with that, because it brings people together, it gives people touchstones, it celebrates community, and at the same time it's very easy to get distracted in the passive role. I mean, like I talk about it a little bit in the new Teen Witch book. I've done a whole new section on social media and what that represents for us as witches, and also how to avoid bullying online and fake, you know, covens, and just there's a lot of, I've got a whole big section in the new book about it, practicing witchcraft on the internet, you know. But I think there's something very wonderful about celebrating, you know, taking a selfie or a picture of a tarot card and a crystal and a, you know, but if it just stops at a picture to get a certain amount of hits or likes, then that's kind of like a dead end, and it becomes a bit of a corrosive energy in our craft. And then what I'm loving seeing though is so many people are offering, like, you know, doing the oracle readings online, and you and they'll put these beautiful meanings, and having just created an oracle deck myself, it's like I love seeing how other people interpret it, and they go to so much trouble to write this long description on Instagram under the card of what they interpret from the card they've pulled from my deck, and I learn from them, and so it becomes very reciprocal. The teacher is learning from the student, is learning from the teacher, is learning from the student. It's very beautiful. I think that's part of how our magical side of our craft grows. But when social media, you know, as you say, type in hashtag Witches of Instagram and a million hits come up. When it becomes a passive or approval-seeking kind of exercise, oh, I'm a real witch if I've got 200 likes. So I'm a real witch if I've got 200,000 likes. I'm a more real witch if I've got 200,000 likes. And I'm obviously not of the era that grew up with this stuff, but the kids that are born into this, and this is their first experience of interacting with other witches, I hope, and I would think it's important to help them understand that the real magic comes from actually doing the work, not sharing a selfie on Instagram about it.
Yeah.
But you know, it all is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Nice segue. I was going to say, you must be psychic, because like literally the next place we were going to go is your oracle deck.
Oh, good. I'm not waffling on too much then.
No, go for it.
I could literally just let you sit here and walk.
Don't, because we'll be here all afternoon, and I'm supposed to, my boyfriend's waiting for me to go. He's supposed to take me on a date this afternoon.
Oh,
That's big. That's very, I'm outing myself there now, aren't I? Oh my God.
Well, the segue that I was going to go with was like, obviously, because you've written so many books now, and like now I'm so excited to know that you've got more books coming, because
Me
when
too.
there was no more, I was like,
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I'm not ready for this journey to end. What advice do you have for someone that wants to express their voice, whether it be writing a book or writing a blog post, starting a podcast, or even creating an oracle deck? Like, what advice could you give them? Like, what's that little golden nugget wisdom of like a Fiona's wisdom?
Well, I'll tell you what, my number one wisdom for writing it all is, and I've said this all along, whether you're writing a book, whether you're writing a blog, whether you're writing a post on Facebook or Instagram, is well, maybe not so much with Instagram and Facebook posts, different thing. Put that aside for a minute. When you're writing anything that's more than just a few lines, like you're trying to maybe create a blog or actually write a book or a course outline or contents of a course, don't erase anything. Like, don't censor yourself. One of the things, I mean, how did I get to write 14 books and the cards and God knows how many articles and emails and just so much stuff I've written over the years pertaining to this. And it's by not censoring myself too much, by writing. And don't rub it out. Don't go, oh, that shit, fuck it, I'm erasing that. Leave it for at least 24 hours. Go back and read it. And you'll probably see that you were actually tapping into some nuggets of wisdom that, even though at the time it felt like you were just writing shit, actually it was something very beautiful and profound. And, you know, you can always extract the kernel of wisdom and great writing out of something like that. So I'd say never erase anything you're writing. But, you know, obviously if you're doing a post on Instagram, you might want to clean it up before you hit send on it. But I think the next thing is, in these modern times, what's really great, I think that it's great and it's confronting, because everyone can be their own publisher now. You know, you can, back when I started, I was really old school. You know, I wrote my first book on a typewriter and I sent in a slab of paper that thick, you know, in 1997. That was what I put in. I printed out my book and put it in a big fat envelope and posted it off to Sydney to the publishers. I was in Melbourne at the time and sat on the post office steps and cried because I'd sent my baby off, and it's all very romantic and very dramatic. And nowadays you can just put together what you want, pay someone, you know, on some kind of online editing service to edit you, and then you could be published within moments on CreateSpace or you know, whatever it is. Is it Kindle for Amazon now have it, or whatever they're called? Yeah, it's just, you know, there's just so many. So I think what's really exciting and really great is to trust your voice. Number one, see, am I just raving on about myself, or could this be useful in some way? Maybe try to identify your motives. Mm-hmm. And then if you actually can find a way to make the motive about just a little bit of service, something useful, something you're offering, not just about what am I getting out of it, but what can I actually give? And that determines the success of this project. Not so much what I'm going to get back, but how much will it give? So when you can flip your thinking on, you know, why you're doing it, then I think naturally the universe starts to conspire in your favor. It picks up, you're a beacon, you're a light, and it starts to help shine that light on your path. And the words come easier, the opportunities come in, and if you can just get out of the way, get your ego out of the way, then it all flows through. That's kind of, so that would be the tips I would give for writers, and also just to write. And I'm kind of a bit disorganized. I could probably be a lot more organized and have a blog and have a Patreon channel and be out there a lot more than I am. You know, I'm kind of lucky that I've got a bit of a platform of the last, you know, and I've got my humble 10,000 followers on Facebook. But these days, you know, it's, you know, if you've got 200,000 followers, you're considered, you know, kind of relevant, and I've got 10, you know, it's, but I think that the 10 that I have actually look at what I write and actually care about what I'm doing. And I think that's a big difference, you know. So for people now, I know I'm waffling on a bit, but I would say just enjoy and explore all the amazing medium of digital publishing that you can these days. And, but yeah, first and foremost, be patient and kind to yourself as a writer. Don't rub anything out. Like try to read it the next day. Don't decide anything shit until you've given it at least a day to percolate. And then build a bit of a profile online and just do the work. And then as far as like, sorry, I'm waffling on. I'm just also thinking, I'm just helping. There's a writer that, because I do readings, I still offer readings. I don't really advertise it, but through word of mouth, people will contact me. And I've been doing readings for the last 20 years, but lately in the last 10 years, it's been a big part of my life. And I have clients all over the world that I read the cards for, and I'm privileged to share their lives for a period of time as I help them navigate obstacles or challenges or whatever. And a couple of them are writers, want to be writers. So I've helped one girl get her book proposal together, and because I think her idea is really, really good. And I'm going to give it to my publisher with my endorsement.
Wow.
So, where I can, I do that too.
Yeah.
And I've helped get a couple of people published in that way.
That's honestly the definition of being of service. Like,
Yeah.
selfless.
Well, you just know, sometimes you just know I'm meant to do this, and I'll just do it, even though I'm really, really busy, and and I don't charge her for it. It was just like, I wanted to help her because I think that what she's offering is a really beautiful thing, and I want to help her. So it just feels like I should, because I can, so I will. And so that's also, as a witch, I think that's a magical act, because again, it's identifying where you can be of service, and it's not like a little bit like paying it forward, I guess. But the way I live, I don't like, I meant what I said earlier. I own nothing except my freedom and my happiness, and I live a pretty simple life. I don't own much stuff. Certainly nothing big, like no house, no car, no debt, because I paid it off and I don't incur anymore. So keep life really simple as I can. And that allows me more freedom to help others and be available and be useful in the world too. So, but life can get really busy, but I just find if I don't determined by what I'm getting back from it, but what it's contributing, then the universe always takes care of me. I always end up in another great house, or I'm flying someone else's awesome, beautiful airplane, or someone gives me their car to drive for a week, and it all just kind of works out.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was cracking jokes with Vicky earlier that, like, you being a commercial pilot now, I said, can you imagine if you just on a random plane and then you hear this is your captain, Fiona Horne speaking, and I would literally just die.
A couple of times I had passengers that worked out who I was. I mean, I was overseas, but sometimes people would know who I was, and I was flying in the Caribbean commercial operations, particularly for the last 2 years I was a busy international Caribbean charter pilot, flying people all over the Caribbean. And sometimes they'd find out, and then when my boss knew I was a witch, he said, "Oh, I don't care what you call yourself as long as you fly the airplane safely." And I said, well, the airplane's a lot more comfortable than a broomstick. And he laughed, and we had a bit of a joke. But at the end of the day, operating an airplane and doing it to commercial standards is a whole other, thing. And, I lost my job I had a great job, and I resigned from the one job I had, and that was the passenger operation. I wanted to start flying a bigger airplane with a bigger engine, PT6 engine. So I got another job flying a Cessna Caravan for a drop zone in California. I was just going to build Turbine. It was a great airplane to do that after years flying twin pistons. And then COVID happened over in California. So I had been checked out, offered the job, accepted the job. One of the last handshakes to happen before we weren't allowed to touch each other anymore was when my boss offered me the job, and I shook his hand. And then the next weekend when I was supposed to start work, it was all over. California shut down, and I then started to think, what do I do? And ultimately it led me back to Australia, and there's no flying work here. So for me now, so there's nothing. So I'm finding that, I'm here, and I'm grateful to be here. And there's been some sad changes in my family's life, but it's brought us closer together, which is, good. So, I think, okay, well, I'm obviously meant to be doing witchy stuff now, because that's what's resonating and really growing, And so I'll do it for as long as it seems appropriate, and when it's not, I'll stop.
I feel like, if anything, that's what the world needs right now, because we need the world needs healing, and
the
healers of the world. So it needs more of us to kind of answer the call, so to speak, and to kind of
and be creative in how we offer it, because as witches, it might be you might do a spell for someone, or you might do you might just listen to someone who's having a hard time and maybe offer some of our version of healing advice, or you know, you might volunteer somewhere or, you know, as much as you can, given the various restrictions going on. And I know in Victoria, people are having a very tough time, and, you know, but you do what you can. And yeah. And yes. And so it is a time to find the beauty and the gifts of these, you know, deeply challenging times as the fabric of humanity is literally ripped out from under its feet. You know, and I have a pretty alternative narrative about what's actually going on in the world right now. But nonetheless, I think it's a responsibility as witches. We know that the world answers according to the questions we ask her, but we know that, you know, it's more than anyone, I think we know that what we think tends to happen. So it's our responsibility to find the light in all of this, because we do the shadow work. We know that it's right now, there's a time of great darkness in the world, and we can offer those guiding lights out of it, through it and out of it.
Yeah. Wow. Now I feel like I went on a tangent to talk.
We did go on a tangent. How are we doing with time, guys? Are we, what time is it in the physical world right now? How long have we been talking for?
So we've been talking for approximately, I think we've been a bit, well, on camera, I think we've been just under an hour, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should wrap it up with some lucky last questions.
Yeah. Well, the actual question we were going to ask is, so that we can introduce our viewers to some of the amazing working Oracle deck, would you be willing to do a little shuffle for us? And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just for a bit of fun.
Well, psychic that I am with help, I think Vicky's got cards, hasn't she? So maybe she can shuffle them. Yeah, and Darren, you can say to stop, and then I'll read the card.
That's it. Let me know.
Stop.
I'm a terrible shuffler too, by the way. Okay.
I thought you looked great. All right, what one? Did you pick the one on top?
Ooh, yes, I did.
Okay, great. What is
Euphoria, honor yourself.
Ooh. Oh, lovely. Euphoria, honor yourself. You know, I think in light of what we've been talking about, when you look at the image on the card, she's the maiden with the snakes. Like, she's like Medusa, but the snakes are swans. Like, she's sort of the swan feather snake countenance of the white goddess. So definitely about the meditation that goes with that is visualizing going to a deep place in the earth, like a temple, and there's a big white snake there, and she has a message for you, and that's the ritual work you can do with it and see what the message is, what the meditation is, and it's like a guidance to how to honor yourself. In order to read it for the purposes of this pull, I would say, because Darren pulled it, that Darren, this is a time for you to, you know, we've been talking very much about being of service and helping others, but there's a very good saying, you can't carry another man's bag if your own arm is broken. So there's an element of healing and honoring, realizing that if your cup is not full, you know, you shouldn't be offering it around to a lot of people to have a sip out of it. It's like, try to balance the energies of what you're giving and what you're actually nourishing within yourself. So it is the card of self-nourishing. And I just, every card in the deck has a ritual that goes with it, and a meditation that goes with that one's really beautiful. I was kind of, the way I created the cards was, I worked with a wonderful artist, Marcella Bolivar. She's in Colombia. So through the virtual world, she allowed me to go into her body of artwork and take 36 images to turn into the cards. And then it was like, I started to dream about them and have these visions, and you know, I just had to get out of the way really and let it all come through, and then add my practical advice on top of it. But it was an amazing experience to create the magic of your oracle, and I've just received the most beautiful feedback from people. And it is a shadow work deck. It's a dark deck.
Yeah, that's what I love about.
Especially for the individual witch. Like, it really is the card for the reader to pull for themselves, you know. But Darren, yeah, I don't know if you relate to that, but that card was pulled for you because, you know, you need to sort of nourish yourself a bit more and not be putting it out there so much.
And that actually does resonate.
Like you. I was about to say, that sounds exactly like.
I'm literally spreading myself. Well, I'm not spreading myself too thin, but I've got my finger in a lot of pies at the moment, trying to just help in every way that I can, because it's like, for me, I'm in Melbourne. I use fitness classes in person. All of those people want to exercise. So I'm like teaching so many classes online and tarot stuff and just everything. And I'm like, okay, Fiona said, take a step back. I will listen.
And the other thing about the ritual in the card, there's a beautiful part of it that's like it's like give yourself a massage. So use and actually maybe infuse what you're using with crystal if you can, like mica or something that energetically can. I mean, I love putting the mica into creams and applying it because it does. I think it harmonizes your energy as well as it puts a beautiful sheen on your skin that allows you to sort of step into a visually glowing countenance. So you can, I mean, I think it's like a physical assist to achieving a transcendental state of self. So you'd have to try it to see what I mean. But yeah, you know, it's really, but the other way you can do it as well is just the self-massage, self-love, but doing it in a sacred way and understanding that as you nourish your physical form, it's the seat of your soul, you know, it's the temple in which your soul resides, your physical body. So it's not you per se, but it is the temple in which your soul resides. So treat it with great respect and love, nourish it, and then you become able to be more useful in the world by doing that.
It's ironic that you picked up on Micah, because that was actually Micah Wolfbane was going to be my pen name should I ever write a book.
How interesting. Wow.
Like literally,
yeah.
and that was
really
the name that came to
when
I was reading Life's a Witch, and I remember I was reading other books as well by some of the other authors that I followed over the years, and one of them was about picking your magical name, and I thought, I'm not going to do the whole witch's name thing, but sort of, but I won't, but I've never really used it, but I thought I'm going to make it like a pen name. And it was Micah Wolfbane. And
I love it. It's the best name ever.
Germany, and
That's awesome.
Love it. Love it.
And I did pick up in a couple of interviews and stuff with your Oracle deck that you kept mentioning that it was your first. Does that mean that there may possibly be another?
Well, you're now the psychic one, because my publishers did say to me just the other day, would I be open to doing another Oracle deck, but more geared towards teen witchcraft. And, you know, I guess obviously because they're going to bring the book out, but they think there might be an opportunity for me to create a deck that would speak to that. But, you know, I think we can know that, like say when I was editing Life's a Witch this last year and rewriting it, and pretty much it's a new book. I mean, it's so rewritten, but I actually really enjoyed going back and reading that. I learned a lot again. There's a lot of stuff you kind of gloss over after a while.
And you kind of forget.
You know, yeah, you know, and you become like a student again. Like for example, I'm a yoga instructor, been doing it for ages, but it's like, even if you're instructing yoga, and then, you know, in lockdown, I've been through the 6 weeks of coming out to Australia. I had to ISO in a hotel room for 2 weeks and ISO in a house for 2 weeks. And I was just alone so much for those 6 weeks of just being able to get out here through the whole COVID thing. And so I was doing my own practice. But when you do your own practice, you tend to sort of do the practice that you feel like doing on the day. You're not really, you know, and I think that, and then you become a student again. Like now I'm a student at a studio here, and I'm loving being a student again and not being the teacher, and just learning, growing. My practice is evolving again. And it was the same when I went back and read Life's a Witch and re-edited and reworked it. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And of course, and oh my God, I wrote that when I was 17. Well, clearly I wasn't as fucked up as I thought I was, because I had that going. So it was a sense of anchoring. And I think it's really important sometimes to sort of strip back things to the bare bones and revisit a lot of the stuff that's formed the foundations of our personal practice. And so Teen Magic, coming out as it is, it might be a book that you would enjoy looking at. And, you know, especially if you read the original versions of Life's a Witch, you might look at it and go, wow, it's so interesting to see how witchcraft has evolved for the newbies coming out. And what can I learn from that, you know?
Oh, don't worry, I'll be buying it, because
I will too. And I have the excuse because I have an 11-year-old daughter. So
well, there you go. Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, though. That's really good, because there's
it'll be something you can read together, something you can look at together. I mean, because 11, it's, you know, there are sections in the book about you know, I mean, it's funny. There's a section in the book, Let's Talk About Teen Sex. And I had a teen reader. We had some readers, like modern teen readers. And a lot of teens are very conservative now, very PC, and more so than before. And one of them was saying, well, you do realize that people who are under 16, you know, will be reading this book and, you know, they shouldn't be having sex. That's a crime. And I said, well, it's not a crime to read about sex.
No.
and everyone does. So, you know, I thought that was interesting. But, you know, that's probably the only and there's a chapter about drugs and alcohol and why you're going to do it, but why it's not the path to enlightenment and success ultimately. So, you know, there's some stuff like that in there, but there's some really beautiful, just revisiting it again, some beautiful, I'm grateful that I wrote it. And it's just, you know, revisiting your relationship with the earth and the natural world, and with the child's mind, you know, and it's very pure and very beautiful. So yeah, I hope adults will enjoy the Teen Magic book too.
What better way for adults to connect with their inner child than targeted to teens?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just tap into that sense of the beginning, you know, beginning of this physical body's journey of this, you know.
Now, I'm conscious of time, Fiona. I feel like
yes, and I do. Yeah, I do have to go. I'd love to share with you guys, like we talked about, a little bit of information about my tour in Western Australia. So I can even hold up the poster if anyone's looking on YouTube.
Yay.
I don't know if it'll work though. I've got to put it in front of me.
There we go.
But anyway, it's on FionaHorne.com, all the tour details. The reason I'm touring Western Australia this October, and I'm touring Saturday the 17th of October at Quill Collective in Vass, Saturday 24th of October in Sanctuary Sisu in Mandurah, Sunday the 25th of October, Sonar Room in Fremantle, Thursday the 29th of October at the Bodhi Tree Cafe in Mount Hawthorn, and finally the weekend of Friday the 30th of October through to Sunday the 1st of November, I'm going to be at Sisterhood Rising, which is an amazing women-only event.
Damn.
I'm really blessed. And Wild Tribe, who put that on, are also presenting my tour, and Tracy McPhee and all those girls are just so amazing. But yeah, really beautiful opportunity to be able to tour Western Australia, because I did do a tour of the East Coast. I did the Art of Witch tour of the East Coast last year in July, and I wasn't able to get to Western Australia. Candidly, couldn't afford it. Who pays for all this stuff? Me. Yeah. It's like, and then I hope the ticket sales will help me balance out how much it costs to hire venues and do the publicist thing and the posters and everything. It all comes out of me, and then hopefully it, you know, makes its way through. So this tour is very much a labor of magical love, and I'm really hoping people will come out, and we can. I want to offer my best, I guess, magical tips over the last 30 years. Pull some cards, do some spell and ritual work, do a Q&A with the audience, and talk about. You know, finding our ways through these challenging times as witches, and how we can use our magic to help and heal ourselves as well as others, as we do live in confronting times right now. So yeah, and I'm also going to add a whole section in about magical foraging and fossicking for tools, for magical tools, because finding a lot of people just, you know, it's not as easy to just order stuff online right now. It's like post this shit. It's like you know, and not that you should. Like, so how can you walk outside into your natural environment, even if you live in the city, and even if you've only got 1 hour visits to the park a day because of bloody COVID restrictions? Well, what can you do about foraging and fossicking magically to create altars and shrines and tools for magical work? How can you do all that without all the usual props and conveniences and that? So I'm going to offer a little bit of that in, because as I've become a very nomadic witch, I've found myself getting quite inventive and resourceful with on the spot witchcraft, you know. So I want to offer that as a part of my tour this time too, which I didn't offer last year, but it seems timely to do that now.
I think that's good. But no, and also for our listeners,
Adelaide. I've just put that out.
It'll happen at some point. I couldn't get to Adelaide last year because the hiring of venues was so exorbitant there. I just couldn't do it. And it was just really, really hard. And I've been able to hire venues here. I've got lucky with a couple, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm just taking this little punt. See how it'll work out. The universe called me to do it. I know it'll all work out.
Yeah, that's it.
Vicky, worst case scenario, if she comes back to Melbourne, you can just come stay at my place.
Yeah,
cheers. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just literally no hotel.
We'll all just hang out at Darren's. No worries.
We're going to have a good old witchy, woo-woo kind of like whatever gathering at our place.
Perfect.
But yes, for our listeners, we will be posting some promotional material for Fiona on our Instagram and on our Facebook. So guys, please.
Thank you.
And please
And everything's on my website too, fionahorne.com. I do my website myself as well, so I've made sure that everything's up to date. And the links, the tickets for the West Australian tour are available through ticket booths, so the links are there, and the links to the Facebook event pages for each event's there. And some of the venues are cafes, so they'll be offering food, and the bar at the Sonar Room's open, and most of the events are afternoon, evening events too. So anyway, if there's any Western Australian listeners, I'd really love to meet my Western Australian magical community. I haven't toured here for 20 years. That's how long it's been since I was able to tour Western Australia. So I'm really, really grateful to be here and looking forward to catching up with people who are out here.
So just recapping for everyone, we've got The Art of Witchcraft, which is available from all major bookstores. You also have Magic of You, the Oracle deck, which you can order from, well, you can order online if you're stuck in Melbourne like me.
That's right.
Yeah, everything's online. It's all online, and you can even, by going to fionahorne.com, I've got links there, but everything's available through Amazon and Booktopia and all that good stuff. My autobiography, this one, I've got a copy of it, Naked Witch. Here it is. That's out as well. And then some of the older ones too, like you can still get this one, my original US UK version. Yeah, it's those two books. It's those two books combined into this one. The 20th anniversary one of this just came out in the US and the UK. But I love that you've got those two originals.
I know, these are my originals.
Yeah, they're rare. That's so
Well,
great.
I bet this one's not available anymore. Either is one.
Well, actually, Pop Goes the Witch, can you believe they're still selling it? It's still got a few going, but Life's the Witch is now a collector's item, but it'll be replaced by the,
I might just post it to you and get you to, you know.
Yeah. Oh, don't put it in the post. So the post is really weird. I'll just I'm hoping to come to Melbourne early next year if COVID lifts. There's a goddess gathering happening, so we'll have to connect then. It's going to happen in March. The girls moved it from November to March, so
awesome. Well,
that'll be getting announced soon.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to Fiona. I feel like this isn't like someone who I've just met. I feel like we've known you.
Yeah, I feel like we've known each other forever. So, well, there's kindred spirits, you know. We're three witches having a conversation. It's all good.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time again. And guys, we hope to hear, you guys will hear from us, next Wednesday. So this one will be coming live. Actually, no, I shouldn't say it's coming live next week because they're going to hear it when it's live.
I know, when it's live. Well, I just want to say thank you again, guys, for letting me be the first guest on your awesome new podcast. And I'm very honored. So thank you. I'll be sharing it on all my platforms.
Yeah. And I'll send you, Fiona, I'll send you the little tile that I've made for the... See, like it first.
Yes, please. Yeah, so I can put that up for sure. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much for being
all
here.
right. Well, thank you, guys. Blessed be.
Bye.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. You too.